Hello everyone. This is the 21st part of the story Game of Thrones, The Prideful One. Chapter 101. With Neltharion on my side, things would fall in line really fast. From afar I could already see High Garden, and thanks to my ravens I knew where the enemy's army was hiding, and that they were planning to flank me. Now it was just a matter of time. With my dragon son hidden I would have the element of surprise. With it, I would catch Tywin off guard and burn his troops to a crisp. Tywin was smart, but he was still human, and when facing the unknown we humans panic. It's in our wretched nature. There is no one here. This feels like a trap, your grace, Ned Stark muttered. I smiled at him. After all, I didn't expect him to catch up about that. That's because it is. Ned blinked in the realization that I knew about it and stared. We must warn the men. I shook my head. No, they don't have to know. I have been moving them around with the trap in mind. For now they must remain ignorant. I had told my men to expect traps and stuff before leaving. Now it was a bit too late to let them know. It would create a mild panic that would alert the scouts following us, and would stop Tywin from attacking. I had to let Tywin think he had me where he wanted, weaponizing his own pride against him. I see, Ned Stark sighed, probably understanding the motives behind my actions. If the mountain comes, let me have at it, Oberyn asked with a dark look on his face. I want to kill him myself. I knew for a fact Oberyn could defeat the mountain, but I also knew his thirst for vengeance and his desire to hear him confess would end up killing him. I'm afraid I cannot. I shook my head. But I don't mind leaving you with Tywin, perhaps his son? Oberyn glared at me for a second. You think I can't kill him? I know for a fact you can, I chuckled, but I also know you lose too much skill when mad. Against someone like Tywin that's not a problem at all. But against someone like the mountain will only end up with your head splattered against the ground. Oberyn kept on glaring for a few seconds before he sighed. I suppose to an extent you are right. He then smiled, and killing a Tywin is better anyways. He was the one to give the order. I nodded. That's right, as we continued marching towards High Garden. A few hours later, just as we were getting closer to the castle, one of my men shouted, "Soldiers coming." I looked out behind, seeing a large group of men armed with spears, swords and hammers rushing toward us, but not only in that direction. In each direction I would see men rushing at us. Finally, Tywin had fallen for the bait I had laid out for him. Quickly I shouted at my men to be ready, still keeping Neltharion hidden. I needed them to be closer, so unsheathing my sword I galloped with my horse and men to the battle. I rushed into battle with a smile on my face, killing every enemy in my way, my blade cutting down enemies as I leaped from foe to foe. Spread and find the generals. Find Tywin. I could hear my ravens shout around in the battlefield, taking the initiative of finding the enemy leader so that we could take care of him fast. As I dance around the battlefield with grace and precision, enemy after enemy falls before my blade, fear spreading among the enemy soldiers like a disease, and for a good reason. I was terror of the battlefield, but even then, they refused to run. It seemed they feared Tywin more than they feared me. Intriguing. It was time. They were all somewhat close. Neltharion. I jump off my horse Rampa with a primal scream, summoning my son into the battlefield from the skies. My sword gleaming with blood of my enemies in my hands as its edge shape catches the sunlight. Seconds later, Neltharion appeared looming from above the skies, letting his presence be known with a powerful growl that shook the battlefield itself. The great beast of fire and flame was finally here, a mighty creature that would make fire rain on my enemies. Without waiting for a command, Neltharion knows what he has to do, and breathes a powerful stream of fire that consumes the enemy forces. Their cries of agony fill the air as they burn, some trying to run from the stream, only to be burned even by Neltharion's flames. Little by little my enemies are destroyed, many of them burned beyond human recognition with their bodies lying on the ground, corpses that will soon be forgotten as the battle moves on. We found Jaime. Caw. He's attacking from the south. Caw. Find Tywin and the rest of his generals. I ordered my feathery friends as I continued with my assault. Normally I would have gone for Jaime and killed him, but Oberyn was already on the south, and he called dibs on Jaime. Jaime Lannister point of view. Dragons, they were real. This little brat actually had the very thing that brought the Seven Kingdoms together hundreds of years ago. Tyrion was right. Ronard was to be feared. When father sent me to lead this attack, I didn't expect to fight creatures that were thought to be extinct. This was stupid. One dragon and all our hopes of winning were off the table. Every minute the dragon was here, hundreds of my men would fall. I had to retreat. Father did not plan for me. What good are swords and arrows if you can't hit your enemy? Retreat. I shouted, but as I did, a spear landed dangerously close to my head, killing an ally behind me. I'm sorry, but you and I have a date. The viper, that tone, that venom on his voice, there was no doubt, he was Oberyn Martell. You don't want to do this, I warned him, sword ready. Oh, but I do. Oberyn smiled, killing a few soldiers that tried to attack him. As he approached me, you have no idea how much I want to. It seemed I would have to kill a viper before I escaped this hellhole. So be it, I said, taking a stance. Now, let's us dance, for Elia, Oberyn said with a dark look on his, and with a spear at hand. Tywin Lannister point of view. My son would come victorious on that battlefield. I knew that much. If he followed the plan to the letter, we would win. I had planned for every possible outcome. Ronard lacked the experience I had, and I would exploit that to the limit. Soon, all this madness will come to an end, and our family will stand above the bodies in glory. My legacy would finally be cemented on stone. My family would always be remembered as the ones that stopped the Targaryens, and all in a lifetime. After this, all I would have to do would be force Jaime out of the guard so he can take his birthright. Soon. Chapter 102. The fire was consuming every enemy on its path with ease, and soon enough my army was winning with little to no effort, and it was no surprise. Neltharion, even though not fully grown, was a force to be reckoned with. His might was too much for the current military to handle. Don't let them escape, I said as I swung my weapon left and right, decapitating enemy soldiers coming my way. Valyrian steel plus super strength were sure the lethal combination. Come at me, fuckers! With a smile I took a deep breath in the middle of this battle as I dodged the poor attempts the Lannister and Tyrell men were giving to kill me. Before I started moving around my opponents with my one sword in each hand, I proceeded to dance around them. With every move I made, a soldier would fall dead into the ground, a lethal tempo of art and destruction. I didn't have to command anyone right now, which in turn made me the best weapon. No hesitation, no cares, I just acted. After all, I had taken Tywin's plans, turning them into my toilet paper. He had failed. With all his experience, connections and influence, he had ultimately failed. He had, like the rest before him, committed the same mistake. He underestimated me, and he was paying the price. I continued pushing the enemies back, with the Neltharion ensuring they didn't escape. All I had to do was show the Southerners why they should fear me in battle. Is that all? I taunted, feeling quite good about myself. Today was a great day to be me. Oberyn Martell point of view. I stared Jaime, a Lannister there for me to kill, and I couldn't help but smile. I was finally getting my chance to avenge Elia. Don't hold back, or I'm going to break you fast, I snarled at him. Jaime shrugged his shoulders, smiled, and slowly brought one foot behind his back as he unsheathed his blade. Fine by me. With a dry chuckle, I rushed at Jaime with my spear ready, but he dipped and twirled around right as my spear was about to reach him. At that same moment he tried to slash me upwards with his sword, which I managed to dodge just in time. I took this opportunity and tried to do a spin cut, but he parried the attack, reading my intentions very well. He was undoubtedly a good swordsman, but I faced better. In response he tried to cleave my legs, but a quick jump above his cut proved to be enough to dodge the attack. Taking this momentum to my advantage, I took the blunt end of my spear, smashing Jaime on the side, who in turn lost his balance for a second, but recovered with an upward slash that managed to cut a bit of flesh. Nothing serious. Blocking his next attack, I stabbed the lion in the solar plexus, trying to kill him, but instead I ended up knocking the wind out of the swordsman and stunning him for a brief moment. The quick blow had opened Jaime up for another attack, and I always aimed to please, so I obliged him, doing what Ronard calls a Spartan kick into Jaime's chest. Jaime, having recovered a bit, followed that up with a quick uppercut and a swift side cut with his blade that I managed to avoid being lethal. This is way more entertaining than I anticipated, I chuckled with clear venom in my words. Jaime gave me an apologetic shrug, with a face that said, I do what I can. Taking a deep breath, Jaime lunged forward, quickly sprinting towards me and coming closer. I smiled as I ducked forward, dodging his attack while trying to pierce his head. Jaime noticed this and rolled forward under my attack in a swift motion, and sprinted at me again as soon as my attack failed, but this time I had a new approach. I had fought Ronard enough to learn a few tricks and new styles. With a smirk on my face I raised my spear, waiting for the right moment, and it came when he tried to attack me. I delivered a quick cut on his arm as I jumped back to gain some distance. and dashed forward with my spear straight out in front of me. With Ronard I had learned that small fast hits were my best shot. My plan was to destroy his sword hand, so I attempted to stab his arm, but he deflected the attack, barely in time. It was obvious now he was having troubles keeping up with my speed. Having troubles, oh mighty lion? Not at all, Jamie smiled, with that obnoxious overconfidence of his. Very well, I dashed forward, cutting his cheek with one of my attacks. We exchanged blows for a bit as blood splattered everywhere. None of us was making any lethal cuts. I was faster, and he was fast enough to react, but I was a snake. People should not fear my fangs, but my poison, and soon the lion would understand that. Parrying his next swing, I noticed during this, a bit too late may I add, that the last attack was just a distraction, because soon enough his fist smashed against my head with brute force, making me lose balance for a brief moment, but this was long enough for him to deliver cut. He had fucked my left arm for the remaining of the battle. The kitty has some claws. Who would have thought? You really got me there, I said, panting. I might have lost my left arm, but this was far from over. Bad choice of words. You can do better, Jamie smirked at me. Your last words have to be something symbolic. Good, it's good that you know, that way I don't have to explain that to you. Using one of Ronard's smoke bombs, I dashed behind Jamie as he struggled to see, keeping his guard up, but this little surprise gave me more than enough time to pierce his right leg. But he swirled around cutting my spear, with a flashing smile that shouted victory, but that soon vanished as he started to scream in agony. The poison had finally kicked in. Ah! Jamie shouted in deep, sweat-agonizing pain. You don't fight with honor, he said with anger. This is war. There is no honor. There are those who come back to their families, like me, and those that die with their so-called honor, like you. Not that I believed Jamie to have any honor. Besides, I'm a snake, that's how we play. Well then, snake. Kill me, Jamie spat at me. Father will enjoy tearing your family apart after this. Ah, while I would love to kill you. I can't, I chuckled. Ronard had ordered me to avoid killing them if I could, and luckily for me I was able to subdue the lion, all in favor of getting Tywin. After that, Jamie would die. Is the snake afraid of the little bear? Jamie Lannister taunted with a smirk, trying to hide the immeasurable amount of pain the poison I had injected on his body was probably causing. Unbelievably so, I sighed. If there was one man I would never have as my enemy would be Ronard, a monster walking among humans, and you should fear him too. With that I smacked the lion out cold. I had won my first battle against the Lannisters. Do you see this, Elia? I did it, my sweet son. I'm avenging you. Just wait. I will put all these bastards in hell. The sun sure was shining today. Perhaps Elia was smiling at me. Chapter 103. I had won this fight, capturing Jamie in the way, which would give me quite the political tool to use against Tywin, disrupting his calm demeanor by using his golden sun. Highgarden was on the way to be mine. The Tyrells still had more than enough forces to attack station in their ancestral home, and while a normal siege would take me weeks to months, with Neltharion it would take a day or two. I had to take this opportunity to push the enemies to their knees, before they came up with a plan to hurt or kill Neltharion, which meant I had for now to exploit Neltharion to the fullest. Burning my way to the throne, after all, I had bigger concerns beyond the wall, and wasting time playing games with these imbeciles was not a priority. You did great, I praised my dragon son, who grinned in return. You are a great warrior. Of course the same had to apply to me, Neltharion hissed with pride. He always wanted to prove others he was my son beyond words. I chuckled at the dragon antics as I ordered him to rest. While he himself didn't want to admit it, he was tired. Breathing torrents of fire for hours had taxed him quite a bit, and we had to recover our strength, for tomorrow, this garden and its lands would be ours. Not only that, but I also needed to rest, because in every battle I would push my physical limits to kill as many soldiers as I could, ensuring we always had the upper hand in any battle, and while physically I would still feel energized, my mind would grow tired, though this time, this effect was worse. It seemed hours of fighting, no matter how easy they were, could slow down even a super soldier. I need to rest, I yawned. Hello there, Oberyn greeted, getting in sweet way to my tent. Little did he know, he would soon face my wrath if he didn't let me sleep. I'm super tired, so be gone for now. Not only I had been fighting for hours, but the last few weeks I had been sleeping very little. Maybe the stress of the upcoming battle was affecting me, more than I cared to admit. I just wanted to thank you, Oberyn chuckled, for letting me fight, Jaime, and for trusting me to not kill him. Letting out a sigh, I smiled at the wounded warrior. You deserve that trust. You are one of the few that I feel I can trust. With that said, I started to walk to my tent, not before leaving the snake with one last message. If you wake me up, your brother will have to fight for you. After all, he will have a higher battle prowess. Oberyn took a step back, with a playful smile diffusing the situation. I would never. Good, I nodded, finally getting to the one thing I missed right now, almost as much as my family and Essos, my bed, finally. And I knew it wouldn't take long for the sweet embrace of sleep to take me out on a trip, giving me the well-deserved rest I so much desired. Daenerys' point of view. Yunkai and the other cities my husband, Ronard, had conquered were under control, but even with the might of our dragons, and army, small rebel cells were rising, and while this was something Ronard himself knew it would at one point happen, I couldn't really understand how could anyone be so stupid. Even if they managed to defeat me, which was a big if, they would unavoidably fall once again under the wrath of my husband. So far, the rebels were easy enough to deal with, but I knew I had to stop them before they became a real threat. No enemy is too small, no man is too weak, so with that in mind, Braavos was for now my safe haven, having no nobles alive, and the people of Braavos fearing my husband. Everyone was nothing but compliant. While I wanted nothing more than to prove Ronard I could help him, finishing what he started, I had also taken into account I was a mother now, and that was bigger than the crown and anything else. For now I had decided to first ensure the cities we had under us, to be in absolute control, before moving with our conquest. The slightest mistake could prove to be fatal to my babies, and that was something I could not allow. The twins were our greatest strength and weakness, and I would ensure their safety no matter what. I miss you, I cried weakly under the moonlight. A queen should not show weakness, but I was weak without him. How much I missed his warmth, his smile, but I knew soon we would be reunited. Ronard Mormont point of view. Next day. The morning sun was shining brightly, and I couldn't help but smile at what was coming ahead. The remaining forces of the Tyrells would face the might of my army, and I would claim these lands for me. Too bad, for that to happen, the Tyrells would have to die. Bad for them, that is. The more we marched, the closer the last battle on this part of the south was, looming behind the gardens. My men were fully rested, and ready to fight. But the one they had to fear was also the most eager to prove himself once more in the battlefield, Neltharion. And maybe with enough luck, the tales of my dragon son would spread among the 7 kingdoms, bringing them into their knees without a fight. Dragons, after all, were the very beasts that brought them together in the first place, and once again, they would. We are here, Ned commented, pouting at the army ahead with a very grim look. Around 30,000 soldiers, ready to be slaughtered. Perhaps Tywin was nothing but false propaganda, or the Tyrells were acting against his wishes and stayed to protect their land. Either way it worked for me. We stand once again, I shouted, getting the full attention of my army on me. In the heat of battle, I smiled. Let's show these flowers why they shouldn't fight us. By this point my army was stomping the ground, shaking the very ground with battle cries. I was the first to gallop in the battlefield, cutting hundreds of arrows coming my way, as a single thought crossed my mind: cute. Giving the signal, with my left hand, Neltharion descended into the battlefield, with a growl that thundered the very air, shaking the resolves of each enemy. Lit them on fire, son. Neltharion nodded, and a stream of fire started to burn beyond recognition. All the archers, one by one, their screams filling the air, with pain and agony, and in their faces the sour realization, they had no hope of winning this. It seems fire is super effective, I chuckled, as I covered the gardens with the blood of the fallen flowers. Victory was mine, and so were the Tyrell lands. Now I wonder, what move will the old lion take against me? He must surely know with all that experience when he is being defeated. I suppose time will tell. Chapter 104. It took but a few hours to dismantle Highgarden defenses, a child's game with my dragon son burning through them, and a very easy at that. Most of the soldiers surrendered, too afraid to face a dragon in battle. Those who didn't surrender, tried to fight or escape. Unfortunately, they failed completely at both attempts. No horse can outrun a dragon. But not all victories are sugar-coated. Tywin Lannister, even with all his faults, had apparently prepared for the imminent scenario of me winning this fight. That old bastard, I chuckled, coming to the realization that all the banks of gold and food in Highgarden were empty, and considering how through the old lion was, I knew for a fact I would not find a single coin or wheat within the castle walls. he had played his hand well, very well. But even then, he had made mistakes, because the fact that his son being was in my hands was undoubtedly a miscalculation on his part. Though this fact brought an important question to my mind: how did Tywin manage to do this, without me knowing? My spies were still unknown for him, that much was for sure, but even with all the ravens I had on him, he used another person. The realization came to me like a thunder: my ravens had orders to follow the main players of the game, and only them around. After all, I didn't have enough ravens to keep one on each person in the world, so while my ravens were out of his radar, he must have noticed something, and in the way found a hole in my net. Impressive. But this was nothing but a small victory for the old lion. With his methods being unveiled, it would be easy to control all his moves, and it wasn't like I needed the gold. Thanks to Bravos, I had more than enough more to deal with this war. Your Grace, Ned entered the room I was occupying, announcing his presence. The men are securing the castle. Was that all? I inquired. Normally Lord Stark would avoid talking unless it was important. He was what I call a man of few words. He only spoke when his words would have a meaning. No, I wanted to request for the men to rest here for a fortnight, Ned added with a hopeful look. The Tullys have agreed to bend the knee, and I think it's wise to wait for them. It would give the men time to recover, he stated. And he was right. For me, marching perhaps wasn't that taxing, being a super soldier and stuff, but my men were not, a fact I happened to forget from time to time. Very well, I nodded, deciding it would be most beneficial to have every man available at my disposal, because it was most likely that the next battle would open the throne for me. After all, I would go for Tywin next time, killing the lion and the threat he poses. I'm grateful, Your Grace, Ned Stark said, and soon after left the room. 2 weeks to rest and recover were more than enough time for the Tullys to arrive, and the stories of Neltharion to spread left and right, which in turn would start my favorite part of the game, the physiological part. Let's see your next play, old man, I smiled. Olenna Tyrell point of view 2 weeks later. My son had lost our ancestral home, the very thing the roses of Highgarden had protected for centuries, and how much time did it took the kid to do it? A month? Maybe 2? This was preposterous, and not only that, but somehow Tywin had managed to convince my son to move all of our assets to King's Landing, as a safety measure, which pointed out very clear, that to Tywin we were nothing more than disposable assets, pawns on his game. Though this realization was hardly something new, I always knew this was the case with the old lion, but I never expected him to corner us so badly. If I had to take a few guesses about his plan, I would say he knew that this event would end with Ronard taking Highgarden under his control, which in turn would force us to stay in King's Landing supporting them. Reason why he convinced the idiot I have for a son to move our assets out of our ancestral land. Clever cat, I muttered angrily. I was definitely growing older. In my 60s I would have been able to see this plot. The old lion wanted us cornered. He wanted to leave us no choice but to help him, whether it was for honor, for our house, for blood, or because we didn't have any other choice. But much to my pleasure, the old lion was far from flawless. He had made a bunch of miscalculations. For one, the dragons ended up being real, and two, and probably the most poetic one, he had lost his second, the one human weakness he had, his precious son, and last but not least, he thought he could manipulate me. My son might be the lord of our house, but I run this garden, and it was time change our approach. Dragons, and losing our house was something I didn't sign up for, and after this awful turn of events, it was very clear to me now that Marjorie would never be queen, and I'd rather have my grandchildren alive, instead of having crowns under the ground, and perhaps it was not too late to make some alliances with the bear. Now, how do I break up the news to my granddaughter? Marjorie was smart, but very short-sighted, and I knew she would object, so I had to thread carefully. For now. Tywin Lannister point of view. He had my son, Jaime was on his grasp. I had made a terrible mistake, but how could my plan backfire so terribly? No, that was a stupid question, that I already knew the answer for. Dragons. My plan didn't account for them. I had made a miscalculation because until today, they hadn't made an appearance on the battlefield, not here, not in Essos, and thanks to my skepticism, I had lost my son, my only son. And the worst part was, I had nothing to exchange Jaime for all I knew, he was already dead. No, Jaime was worth more alive, to control my moves, to chain me. Ronard knew that much. My son was a weapon, and the young bear would not hesitate to use him against me. Fuck it all. In anger I smashed my fist against the stone-hard wall, resulting in immediate bleeding on my part, but I didn't care about it, nor felt the pain. because all of this was my fault. I said over and over again that I was not going to underestimate him, and like a moron, I did just that. I underestimated the bear and lost my son. But I had to keep it together. I had to find a way to save my son and win this war. I had to find a way to save my legacy, but for the first time in decades, I didn't know where to begin with. Chapter 105. As Lord Stark had said, the Tully arrived 2 weeks after Highgarden conquest, bringing with them food, weapons and 10,000 men ready to die for me. Taking this opportunity, I had now to make my next move and attack Casterly Rock, because I knew that would lure the old lion out in the open, which in turn would be the end of his long career. After taking that useless piece of land that it was Casterly Rock after their mines ran out of gold, I would turn my undivided attention to King's Landing, destroying my enemies once and for all, at least the ones within this side of the wall. The men are ready to march. We are waiting for your command, Your Grace, Ned said as he entered my newly acquired solar, alongside Kat's younger brother, Edmure Tully, an eager lord ready to prove himself, but sometimes eagerness only leads to failure. It will be an honor to fight by your side, Edmure Tully stated with the utmost admiration, which by itself took me by surprise. After all, it was no secret, his older sister hates me. I smiled at his enthusiasm, wondering if only the woman on the Tully family were crazy. We will leave to Casterly Rock soon, I informed the lords. Attacking Casterly Rock, leaving them no room to prepare, was the best course of action, considering they are still barely processing the fact a mighty dragon was on my side. Ned Stark nodded. I will let the men know, and with that Lord Stark took his brother-in-law out of my solar as I prepared for the upcoming battle. As I was about to leave the solar and talk with Neltharion about the upcoming battle and what was our strategy, a raven flew into the solar landing on my desk, caw. I bring news, I turned to the raven. What news? The spider is planning to use John, the raven cawed. I see. It seemed the spider had yet to learn who was on top of the food chain, and I would gladly be his teacher for that lesson. Keep an eye on the spider. And if he breaths out of line, let me know. But for now, dealing with the spider would have to wait. His time was already set on stone, and besides he was at much an inconvenience, with no real power to be a real threat. He would die, but after I dealt with the more problematic players of this game. But for safety measures, I would still have to talk with John. I knew he would never betray me, or anyone if he could help it, but I still felt like it was my responsibility to talk with him about this situation. Your Grace, John's voice got my attention. It seemed I wasn't going to need to look for him. Jaime is requesting to talk with you. Lord Targaryen, I smiled, offering him a seat. We need to talk. John looked at me with a worried expression, probably wondering if he had done something wrong, or if I had something for him to do. After a long second of silence, he took a deep breath, and sat. In what can I be of service, Your Grace? John inquired. Well, it's about a spider. I started telling John in detail everything about Varys and how I thought he planned to use him. John was shocked, and reassured he didn't even want to be a lord, saying he would never go against me. After all, I was family. I would never betray you, John smiled, as he took the liberty to add a joke, Uncle. Ha, Uncle, well I suppose I am. I did marry his aunt, but it was weird when we both had the same age. Then again, seeing John joke was weird enough. I never thought you would betray me, but that man can manipulate you into doing something you may not think is a betrayal. That's why, from now on, the spider is a kill-on-sight target. I understand, John nodded. So you said Jaime Lannister wanted to talk? I asked, going back to the point he had previously talked about. John nodded. Very well, I nodded, wondering what Jaime wanted from me. Either way, this would prove to be entertaining. Varys' point of view. The young Griff was probably dead. After all, it had been months since I last heard of him. While this was a sad turn of events, I couldn't lose my focus. After all, I had a real Targaryen available, ready for the crown. Jon Snow had ended up being a Targaryen all along, which was something I myself could confirm, but unfortunately for me, Ronard had found out first, putting the rightful king under his claws. I had to do something to bring the realm their rightful king, and I had to do it fast, because I knew that as soon as Ronard won this war, my head would roll, not only because he knew of my deals with the young Griff, but because he had vowed to kill me for my indirect involvement in the assassination attempts on his wife and kids. But finding a way to deal with Ronard was easier said than done. He had shown to be a very capable man, with a terrifying amount of information at his hands, and besides killing him would amount to nothing, well aside the fact that we would have to deal with a very angry dragoness. To deal with Ronard, I would have to find a way to kill him and his family at the same time. But first I had to secure John on our side, as the last heir to the throne. His role would be crucial, but unfortunately for me this had also proven to be a difficult task to accomplish. John had no desire for power, but it was just a matter of time before I found something to push the young dragon on the right path. Every path I take leads to a dead end, I sighed. I had quite the work cut out for me, but deep down I knew I shouldn't be complaining. It was my fault Ronard grew to be this threat. I gave him a queen, and he became a king. I made the monster that is destroying all my plans. I was the one to blame for all of this, but it was still not too late to redeem myself from this catastrophic error. Cersei Lannister point of view. Father had lost the first battle against the bear, losing not only Highgarden, but Jaime. Terror filled my nights, wondering if he was still alive, that idiot. How could he leave me alone? He promised he would never leave me alone. Father promised me we would win, and in the end, they all lied to me, like always. But I would put an end to this. I would destroy the Ronard myself, ending his pitiful attempt at the throne. And it was all thanks to Illyrio, who before dying paid the Alchemist Guild to produce more than enough wildfire to destroy our common enemy. No matter how good the kids is at playing war, the fire would consume him, ending the charade, once and for all. It will be quite the show, I muttered darkly as I eyed at the window, where a raven was sitting, ruining my view. Begone. I swayed the raven off the window. Asterisk I will caw. Take a dump on her wine next time caw. Asterisk the raven cawed at me from the air before flying off. Nick Fury Ravenicus point of view. I was going to meet with my squad today to see how was our favorite toilet doing. To my surprise I found my entire group poking at the man with sticks. What are you doing? I inquired. Asterisk caw. He hasn't moved in 2 days sir caw. Asterisk one of my squad members said as he poked the last eye Euron had. Yeah the motherfucker is dead. I cawed at my squad. Asterisk Sue. Do we still take shits on him? Asterisk one of my ravens asked, holding a piece of corn with jalapeno on his peak. Asterisk I mean. If you want to, we are leaving anyways. Asterisk I answered as I asked, why the jalapeno? I couldn't help myself, I wanted to know. Well, it kinda made my ammunition be all fiery, burning his eye and stuff, so he was eating it to make his poop spicy. I don't know if I should feel proud or concerned, or both. It's both. We leave in 10, so move the fuck up, I caught as I flew off the area. This marks the end of part 21 of the story Game of Thrones, The Prideful One. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.